Hello, welcome to White Baby Gardening and Worm Farm. I apologize for taking so long. I was having some technical difficulties, so I was just trying to sort it out. So today we are going to be discussing no dig gardening, and we're also going to discuss having too much compost in the garden. Hi, Cece. Hi, Han White. Hi, Growing with Jay. Okay, so today I mentioned that already that we're going to be discussing no dig garden. And okay, you're listening while you tend to your garden. That's nice. Get some work done. Hi, Russell. Yes, I know how busy everyone is, especially at this time of year when we have our regular schedule in addition to taking care of the garden. And the garden can be a lot of work. Right, so that's what we're going to discuss. I don't know if Rodney is here yet, because he's the one who, Rodney Parker Jr., because he's the one who requested this no dig garden information. So while I am not certain if he's here yet, I don't know if he's going to be, especially since I started so late. So I'm going to start off first then by discussing having too much compost in your garden. So now I have to rearrange my notes. Okay, Rodney hasn't replied, which means that he's probably not here yet. Okay, so let's talk about having too much compost in the garden. As a lot of you who followed my videos know that I've been having some issues with my plants, and so I decided to do a little bit more research so that I can be more informed and so that I can share the information with you guys so that you can either avoid, or in case you have this problem as well, then you have some idea what you can do. Okay, so can you have too much compost in your soil? Yes, you can have too much compost in your garden. Now, nitrogen is water soluble, plus it moves through the soil rather quickly. Phosphorus, however, it moves very slowly. It moves at a rate of 1 to 2 inches per year. So if you're going to be using compost in your garden, then it is best to use compost that have higher level of nitrogen than phosphorus. But you don't want them to have the same rate of or the same levels of phosphorus to nitrogen. So if you're someone who uses store-bought fertilizer, then pay close attention to that. Sometimes you might have phosphorus deficiency, and so you might choose to buy fertilizers that have higher phosphorus than nitrogen. But in general, if you don't have a phosphorus deficiency, then it is best to find fertilizers that has more nitrogen than phosphorus in it. Now, nitrogen also can be converted to gas. It can be converted to two different types of gas, which will evaporate from the soil, whereas phosphorus does not convert to gas, which means that it's going to stay in the soil for long. A steady buildup of phosphorus in your soil can be toxic. Now, why is high level of phosphorus in your soil a problem. It's prior to Russell mentioning that phosphorus could be a problem in my garden. I did not know that. So as I was researching having too much compost in the garden, I really wanted to know what it is about the compost that having too much of it in the garden is a problem. So during my research, I come across the fact that too much phosphorus can be really bad. So high levels of phosphorus can prevent your plants from being able to absorb nutrients in the soil. So it can prevent your plants from absorbing things like iron, manganese, and zinc. And these your plants definitely need. So because of that, you want to make sure that you control your phosphorus levels. Now, phosphorus also, if it is in high quantity, it can be toxic not only to the plants, but it can also be toxic to the mycorrhizal fungi that is in your soil. So the mycorrhizal fungi that is in your soil, it provides your plants with the nutrients and the water that is there. Now, if these are not present, then the plant will have to work much harder in order to create larger root systems so that they can try to source the nutrients that is there. So this use up a lot of energy when the plant has to be focusing on creating larger root system, and because it is focusing on developing the root system, it is going to be using up a lot of energy, which means that the plant will not be focusing on growing, and it will not be focusing on producing fruits. So for that reason, then you don't want to have too much phosphorus in your garden. Now, what happens when there is too much compost in the soil? Plants will grow too fast, and when the plants grow too fast, they are not able to develop their own natural pesticide, and therefore they are more prone to plant diseases and pests. So, how can you control the amount of phosphorus in your soil? Well, first, you're going to use, rather than using, manure-based compost, which has a lot of phosphorus, you want to use plant-based compost because this has more nitrogen than phosphorus. Right. So feeding your plants manure-based compost will increase the amount of phosphorus that is in your soil. So one thing that you can do to reduce the amount of phosphorus that is in manure compost is by feeding it to your worms, because as you may know, worm casting does not burn your plants. So when you feed it to the worms will break it down, and then you can use it around your plants. So unless you are just starting a no dig garden, in which case you need to add between 6 and 8 inches of organic matter to your garden. If you're not just starting a no dig garden, then you want to add only 1 to 2 inches of compost each year. Your garden does not need more than that to supply it with the plants with the nutrients that it needs. Now, how long can phosphorus levels last in the soil? It is said that the phosphorus levels, if it is between 150 to 200 parts per million, it could last between 3 to 5 years in your soil. During the times when phosphorus levels are high, you want to avoid using compost as much as possible because it's going to contain some level of phosphorus, and especially if it is the manure based compost. So how can you correct if you have too much compost or too much phosphorus in your garden? You cannot take the phosphorus out once it goes into the garden. But there are certain things that you can do to reduce the phosphorus levels. So after you have harvested your last crop for the growing season, then you want to grow crops that grows pretty quickly because it is going to be using up some of the phosphorus. Plants on a whole need phosphorus in order to grow. So, because as you know, phosphorus help to develop proper root system. So, if you plant things that are easy to grow after you've done your last harvest, then these are going to use up a little bit of the phosphorus that is there. Another thing that you can do is to grow more nitrogen fixing plants and use phosphorus free fertilizers. Now, my soil, as you know, in my raised beds, they don't have a lot of soil in there, they have a lot of compost. So, that is one of the reasons why I have been having trouble with the things that I'm growing in my garden because I added a lot of compost over the fall last year. I did this with my first raised bed a few years ago. I the only thing that was in it, the bottom of the bin or the raised bed contained just wood pieces of logs and wood chips, stuff like that. And then the top 10 or so layers was just compost, only compost. And my plants, they grew fast. They look really healthy. But then I started noticing that my carrots started to look as if an animal was sleeping in it. Now, there are no animals sleeping in it because I don't have animals. There are very few animals that come into my yard, and most of them are not going to jump up into my raised beds. My raised beds are 18 inches high. And nothing that I did worked. The carrots, they're just drooping all the time. The produce was very low from the carrots. And usually, when carrots are one of those things that I always have really good yield. So I researched, and based on my research, it says that too much compost can be harmful to the plants, but I didn't really research it to any serious extent. I just researched enough to know that having compost without soil can be too much for your plants. So I've added soil to it since then, and I haven't had that problem. But then now I have all my garden has some amount of soil, but not a lot, and it has a lot of compost that I produce for myself. Then now I've added compost that I collected from the free compost depot. And I know that most of what they have in their compost is plant based, but I do not know. I think I saw, no, they don't have any animal, no manure in there because I think I saw a pamphlet of theirs when the season open for us to collect the compost that says they didn't have any animal manure. So it is all plant based, but it is very strong. So now I need to find some soil to add to my garden. But the problem I'm having is that I can't find soil that does not have any compost in it because all of those who sell soil sell it with compost. So I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to have to go to one construction site where they're doing excavation and see if I can get some of the soil and sterilize it and add it to the garden. But as for the phosphorus problem, that I don't really know how to fix because my plants are already in the garden and you can't take the phosphorus out. So thankfully for most of my raised bed, well, most, yeah, most of my raised bed, I don't have any phosphorus. I didn't add any bone meal to it. I added the bone meals to my self-wicking buckets, and they are doing fine because although they have compost in them, they don't really have a large amount of the compost that I collected from the free depot. So everything that's planted in there is doing okay, thankfully. Yes. So guys, learn from my mistake and don't make the same mistake as I did. Don't add too much compost to your garden. And the main reason why I added so much compost to my raised bed is because I was trying to fill I was trying to fill the raised bed. It's not really just for the nutrients. I was trying to fill the raised bed, but I guess I overdid it. I should have just added a little bit each year rather than trying to fill it all at once. So learn from my mistake, guys. I'm sharing it with you so that you don't make the same mistake, because it hurts when you have to watch your plants die. On the bright side, though, I replanted those that raised bed that the plants died out of. A few of them that I replanted died, but for the most part, the rest are either doing very well or they're doing not too bad. So thankfully, this time around, and I think maybe these ones, I haven't done anything to the garden really, or to the raised bed. So I haven't done anything to correct the problem because there's nothing I can do to correct the problem at the moment. But the plants, the second set that I planted, they are doing well. And I think they are doing well because after I saw what happened to the first set of plants, and I realized that it is a combination of too much nutrients in the raised bed in a combination with the fact that the plants were unhealthy from the fungus gnat. So I started treating the plants that I had in pots so that they could be stronger when I transplant them, because then they would stand a fighting chance. And so they seem to be, for the most part, they are doing okay. And I still have a few more backups. So those that died, I'm going to replace them, but I think maybe I'm going to wait until those plants grow a little bigger before I transplant them, because then they're going to be using up more of the nutrients and they're less likely to get damaged when they are larger. Okay, so now that we have covered too much compost in the garden, we are going to be looking at the no dig method. I don't know if Rodney is here yet, but if not, he can always catch the live on the rebound, if there's any such thing. Yeah, replay. Okay, so let's talk about the no dig. Now, what is the no dig method? It is when you, excuse me, it is when you grow your garden without tilling the soil, because when you till your soil, you're actually disturbing the macro and the microorganism that lives in your soil. No dig method can be used for growing stuff, and it can be used also to clear out weeds from your garden. And if you are just starting a garden and you're converting lawn to growing space, then the no dig method works very well. So first, you're going to need plenty of organic matter, and you're going to need some form of biodegradable sheathing that does not allow light to pass through. So you don't want to use things like carpet or plastic, because the more modern day carpet is very, very high in chemical. They use a lot of chemicals in there. I don't know whether for production or they're treating the carpet with chemicals in order to control insects that might live in the carpet. So like dust mites and stuff like that. So carpet contain a lot of chemicals. So although it is a nice material that you probably could use, you don't want to use carpets and you don't want to use plastic, unless of course the plastic that you are using is compostable. So anything that you're using, you want it to be compostable. Okay, so the goal is to cover the grass that is there if you're trying to kill weed. And you don't want light because light is going to cause the weed to grow. And then you also want to have a lot of organic matter because this is what you're going to be growing your plants in. Now, you're going to spread out your sheeting over the area that you want to turn into a garden or the area where you're trying to kill the weed. And after spreading out your sheeting, you need to have at least 6 to 8 inches thick or 6 to 8 inches high compost or whatever organic matter you're using. Now, what are some of the organic matter that you can use? You can use compost, you can use aged manure, you can use dried leaves, straw, grass clippings, or a combination of some or all of those things. Do any of you guys on the live practice no-dig gardening? I'm doing a little bit of no-dig this year. I'm only just digging the exact area where I'm planting my stuff, so I'm not messing with the soil, just enough space to put my plants in. But I did not use that method where I put down sheeting because I didn't need to do that because I'm planting in raised beds, so I don't really have any weeds growing. Well, I do have a little bit of weed, but yeah, it's already a garden, so I don't need to put down any sheeting to kill any weeds. But yeah, so when you put down these 6 to 8 inches of compost, then you want to compress it because you want it to be firm. So the best way to compress it, apart from trampling it, is to wet it because when you wet the particles, they will gradually settle. So wetting it thoroughly with a hose or whatever means of watering you have will work in compressing the organic matter. Now, if you're using something like agricultural membrane, such as MyPex, then you can use these on top of the organic matter rather than underneath it. And then you just create holes in it just enough, large enough to plant your plants. So that is if you're using agricultural membrane. But even so, you're still going to need 6 to 8 inches of soil, and then you have your agricultural membrane on top. Now, how long does it take for weed to die and for side soil life to be active? For your weed to die, it can take anything from from 3 months. It can take anything from 3 months to a year for the weed to die. And sometimes depending on the type of weed, because you have some that is very resilient. Now, some of them, the very resilient one, can take even 2 years to die. Now, for if the weed is perennial, then it's going to take longer to die. If it is annual weed, then within 2 to 3 months, that weed will die. So, how can you do no dig garden? Oh, hi, Nikki. Sorry, I was there talking away and didn't see that you joined us. Yeah, so for gardens that have already been cultivated, how do you apply the no dig method? Without cultivating the existing soil, you're going to add 6 or so inches of organic matter to the soil, and then the life form is already present in the soil. They are going to start working on that organic matter that you've just added. And after you had that, organic matter, you're going to compress it similar to what you would do when you're trying to kill weed. And you can plant directly in it right after you've added the 6 inches or the 8 inches of organic matter. Now, you do not need to worry about whether or not the uncultivated soil that is below it is going to be hard. Let's see, Russell says, can you do a live on no-till gardening? I only use a handheld shovel for planting. I do not dig with a big shovel, only add to the topsoil, no rotokill. Yes, this no dig is the same as no till. Yeah, they're the same thing. It's just a different terminology. Yeah. So you don't need to worry about the uncultivated soil that is below the organic matter that you have added, because the soil life will create air passages and the roots will be able to penetrate the soil through these passages. It is so much easier to pull weeds when you use the no dig method, because you're planting in fairly loose material, and so even if the plant has a lot of root, unless it sends its roots really deep, then it is much easier to pull out, because as you know, a lot of organic matter, they tend to be fluffy to an extent. Sometimes they do compact, but they don't compact to the point where they are extremely difficult to work. Right. So for the years that follows after you have created your no dig or no till gardening, you don't need to keep on adding 6 to 8 inches of compost every year. You only need to add 1 to 2 inches of organic matter. So the first year when you create your no dig garden, you're going to add the 6 to 8 inches of compost. But every year after that, it is only 2 inches, 1 to 2 inches that you are going to be adding. Oh, Nikki says that's a plus. Weeds are annoying. Tell me about it. They are extremely annoying. I think that's one of the things us gardeners hate the most about gardening, all those weeds. And some weeds are not as bad as others, but when you have things like grass growing into your garden and you know how they can send roots and how resilient those roots are, they can be pretty annoying to work with. And in my area where I have to be dealing with Dutch elms, oh, I should take a picture one day of the amount of seeds that I have on my driveway from the Dutch elm seeds in the Dutch elm trees in the yard. When you have things like the Dutch elms in your yard that produces a lot of seeds, it's even more frustrating, because when those seeds get into your garden for the entire season, you are trying to pull out these weeds or these plants. And if the Dutch elm plant is this tall, you know that the root is going to be at least twice that. So you have to get on it very early, because once they start sending their long roots, it is a pain to get them out. And those Dutch elm drop seeds like crazy. We had rain 2 days ago. Before the rain started, it got extremely windy and the seeds started blowing off the trees. And my kids were watching it and they're calling it seed rain, because that's how many seeds were falling. It's crazy. But yes, those weeds are annoying. So that is one of the main reasons why this year I covered, well, over the fall, I covered my garden with the wood chips, because I'm hoping that at least a lot of those seeds won't germinate. Yes, they're calling it seed rain. Weeds are like laundry, they're never done. That is so true. I've been, well, I must say, since I covered my garden over the fall with the wood chips, I'm doing far less weeding, but the grass that travels from the lawn to the garden, They are so annoying. I'm pulling out grass like every single day in the same location. So, because you can't really get all of the root out, and once there's even a tiny bit of root, they just keep coming back. So, it's frustrating, but I have less to do than I had last year, so I guess I should not be complaining. Okay, so when is the best time to apply organic matter to your garden? The best time is usually after your final harvest, because then the organic matter get a chance to break down and release its nutrients and help to amend the soil. And as it does that, then when you plant your garden, it is already breaking down, and so the nutrients is just there waiting for the plants to use it up. Now, what are the disadvantages though of no dig gardening? Because as you know, with everything in life, there's going to be advantages and there are going to be disadvantages. So, what are the advantages and the disadvantages? Okay, so the disadvantages of the no dig garden is one, it requires a lot of compost or organic matter to get is of the organic matter, not killing the living thing, the living soil. That's the advantage. Yes, very good advantage too. So it requires a lot of compost, and for people who are not able to produce that, it can be super expensive. And the next thing is that it requires a lot of shoveling in order to get that material spread out into the garden. One, it provide home. Also, it provide a home for a lot of pests, a lot of creatures that tend to love to overwinter in these organic matter, because it provide them with food and it provide them with shelter over the winter from, especially from pests or predators, that is. Yes, so it provides habitat for pests. Now the advantages though far outweighs the disadvantages, which is what makes it worthwhile. Because like Russell says, you're not killing off the soil life. So one, you're gonna be doing less watering because organic matter tend to retain more moisture. You're gonna have less weeding to do, so it's gonna make your garden somewhat more manageable. You're going to have less snails and slugs in your garden. It is ideal for root vegetable because it is so loose that when the root vegetables start to grow, then there is nothing restricting that growth and they're not growing deformed. And in addition to that, when it's time to harvest those vegetables, it's gonna be very easy to harvest them, or at least it will be easier to harvest them. Two, you have less digging. And who wouldn't want to save time on digging? Sometimes the time that it takes to cultivate your garden, especially if you have a large garden, you can be there for quite a while. But the depth does provide nutrients for the plants to grow, but it breaks the communication with the root to the soil. Yeah, the depth does provide nutrients for the soil. And that is one of the benefits too of using the no dig method, because Even though you may put down biodegradable matter, they will soften, and then when they soften, the roots can penetrate through them. The communication brings in nutrients to the roots. Yeah. So the no dig method does not really prevent your root from going deep, because, like I said before, the uncultivated soil that is below the organic matter, as the soil life works on it, they're creating air passages that the roots are able to go deeper than the depth of the organic matter. And there are some nutrients that are usually deeper down into the soil. So they're not really on the surface. So the roots can go down and reach to these matters. So that is one benefit. Let's see. Leafy Wiggy says, I fell asleep after preparing and watering a bunch of peat moss. I'm pretty late. Oh, don't worry. I don't think you're so late as you think you are, because I was about 20 minutes or half an hour behind time because I was having some technical difficulty. So you're not as late as you think you are. Oh, hi, Mac Bajan. Russell, big brain man. Hey, Russell, can you invent a time slowing machine so I can get time to garden? I would, if you're inventing that, don't forget about me. uh, don't forget about me at all. I think out of everything, even more than food, that is something that would sell like hot bread if someone could actually create that, but unfortunately, that's not possible. Yeah. But man, that would go like hot bread, because that's one of the biggest issue we have in this lifetime. There is just never enough time. Yeah, so you dig less, your plants are healthier, and it provide home not only for, as I said, for the disadvantages, it provide homes for pests. It also provide home for some beneficial insects. So that is one of the advantage, and your soil is a lot healthier. So I'm going to be discussing some of the things, elaborating more on how it makes your soil healthier and stuff like that as we go down a little further into the discussion. So, what can you do if you want to practice no-dig gardening, but then you don't have the organic matter or the resources to get started? Then you're going to go to the long-term method, where you might not be able to start the no-dig garden right away, but then each year you try to add as much organic matter as you can, and as time goes by, you will end up with a reasonable amount of organic matter so that you can start your no-dig method. So, because it can be pretty expensive trying to buy organic matter to start the no-dig method. But for some people who are already in the habit of adding, oh, hi, wood chip gardener. No, I don't think you're late. You're never too late unless you come when the live is ending. But yeah, you're not late. There's still information being discussed. I know everybody is busy, so you come at the time when you are able to. Yes, so for those who over the years they have been adding organic matter regularly to their garden, then starting a no-dig garden is pretty easy for such ones, because all they have to do is just decide that, okay, this year I'm not going to be digging my garden because the section that they're planting in would already be rich in organic matter, which is what I did. So that method where you have to go and you have to add 6 inches of organic matter, I did not have to do that because every year I had more organic matter to my garden. So to do the no dig, all I have to do is just scrape the holes to plant in. I didn't have to make any form of preparation to start the no dig garden. And I think most people nowadays are more focused on having a lot of the organic matter in their garden rather than going to fertilizers and stuff. So it shouldn't be too difficult for anyone who is contemplating the no dig method. And but for those who are just starting out with their garden for the first year or two, then they might need to use this method of adding 6 to 8 inches of compost. Malaysian says, so one of the large jobs I did recently, I put in things called agriculture mounds, almost the same concept. Used all matter on property that you'd regularly throw out. Make up these mounds with logs, leaves, etc. Yeah, agriculture, permaculture, and the no dig, they're all pretty similar. Yeah, I don't really know why there is much of a difference in terms of name because most of the methods is so close to each other, but I guess it depends on who is coming up with the design at that point in time. Yeah, so where are we? Okay, I think we have covered that. So what happens in your soil when you do the no dig method? It is great concept, you're right, it's no dig. Ah, yes, it's German people I was installing for. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I guess I think that is where the agriculture concept started in German. Right. So what happened in the soil of a no-dig garden? If you walk through a forest, you will notice how luscious it is. It's beautiful. The plants are looking healthy, and there is no one cultivating the soil. There is no one watering the soil. It just grows on its own, and no garden that we plant can look as nice and rich and healthy like a forest. So, when you keep that in mind and you keep in mind the fact that there is no one tilling the soil, then that should give us enough evidence to show that we don't necessarily have to till our soil in order to grow things. Because in the forest, the plants grows, the leaves fall, they break down, and as they break down, they trap moisture, they produce nutrients for the plants, they protect whatever organism is living below them, and it provides habitats for so many beneficial insects. So, mimicking that, we can create our garden. Oh, hi, Princess Lillian. Yeah, I know it uses a lot of wood in it, but then it is a kind of similar principle because you're just using the natural things around you. You don't really have to go and add anything like these, like fertilizers or anything like that. So, where was I? Yes, so all of these give evidence that you don't necessarily have to dig your soil in order to plant or to have healthy plants. Now, the organic matter that is on the surface of the soil, it is going to be broken down by the bacteria and the fungi that is there. And the soil life, such as worms and beetles and other microbes, they are going to help to break down the organic matter and make the nutrients readily available for the root of the plants. Hi, Princess. In the forest, the leaves drop in the fall, providing rich nutrients for the soil, and we all know what rain does. Yes, so true. Right, so when these microorganisms break down these organic matter, then it is going to provide nutrients for the root of the plants. Now, these microorganisms that are living in the soil, they create little tunnels, and the tunnel size is going to be based on the type of microorganism that is going through it. So they create tunnels, and these tunnels create passages, and these passages are going to allow airflow, so the root of the plant can get sufficient air. It's going to provide passages for water to channel through, and then the organic matter is going to be holding on to some of those moisture. So this makes it so much easier for the plants to absorb the nutrients. So that is why the no-dig method works so well. Now, what happens when you dig your garden? So I'm not saying that you should not dig your garden. It's up to everyone to decide what method they want to use to cultivate their gardens. But what are some of the things that happen when you till your garden? When you till the soil, you're affecting the natural structure that is in the soil. It is also reducing the population of some of the beneficial organisms that are in the soil. For example, how many times have we tilled our soil and we see where we cut a worm in half, or we might end up squishing a beetle that was in the soil? And there are so many living organisms in the soil. Some of them you can't see with your naked eye, some of them you can see. They all work together. Each of them have their different functions. Sometimes the functions that they carry out might be similar. And so when we disturb the soil, we're disturbing that natural environment that they are trying to create. Now, there are also seeds, weed seeds that are in the soil. And weed seeds can be deep into the soil. Now, the ones that are deep into the soil, they will not germinate. The ones that are closer to the surface of the soil, they tend to germinate. When you till your soil, you are disturbing all those seeds that are down lower. When you turn over that soil, all of those seeds, or most of those seeds, are now getting exposed to the light. They're getting exposed to the air. And when it has air and it has the light, it is going to germinate. And then you're going to end up with more weeds in your garden. So, for this reason, it is good if you can avoid tilling your soil. So, and it saves you so much time too when you don't dig your soil, when you don't till your soil, because, oh, hi, her healthy home. You don't have to till the soil, so that saves you time. And even your harvesting is a whole lot easier, because whereas you'd have to take a fork or a shovel and dig out your root vegetables, you just take your hand and pull them up and you're good to go. So it does save you time. So if you are someone who is interested in the garden, then here are some reasons why you should consider it. So now I've shared all of the information that I've prepared for you guys today. And guess what? I'm going to be taking off shortly because I started late because I was having some technical difficulties. And in order to do this live, I had to run away from work. I didn't have anything prepared until the last minute, so I have to get back to work shortly, and I need to have something in my tummy before I go. So I'm gonna be saying bye to you guys. So thank you guys for being here, supporting my live. participating and sharing your knowledge. I hope to see you again on Friday for our Worm Farm Q&A live. So have yourself a lovely evening and happy gardening. Ah, same to you guys. Yeah, we'll catch you on the next time around her healthy home. Brooklyn Giraffe. I enjoyed your live chats. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. I learned a lot. Okay, you are very welcome. Okay, I will. I'll do my best to get there safely and more so to be safe because I'm going to be high up on a scaffold. Let's see. Have a great week. Same to you, Russell. Okay, bye.